Just a couple of comments about the Yeti. You heard the presentation, and I just wanted to add on that if you ever get a chance to go to Disney World or Disneyland in the Expedition Everest ride, at least the one that I've seen in Disney World, they actually have a sort of little Yeti museum where they actually have some artifacts from Nepal and Tibet depicting, sort of the conceptions of the Yeti in the different cultures, some artifacts on display of the expeditions that were organized to try and find the Yeti. But you saw how, anything that was claimed to be proof was soon proved or shown to be false, right? So the footprints were easily explained as bear tracks. As we'll see, the same is true with Bigfoot. DNA samples were shown to be known animals like goats or bears. Photographs, things like that, shown to be either falsified or of actually some other animal, right? So this is a legend, very interesting legend, but one that has no substantial proof to it. It seems like Bigfoot is sort of the American version of the Yeti. In fact, it may have started in the United States and Canada, sort of as a way for North America to have their own Yeti. There seems to be a lot of influence there. And so there's a lot of similarity in terms of all sorts of theories that are proposed to explain it, right? That it's a Gigantopithecus, so we're talking about that sort of prehistoric survivability phenomena, right? That these giant apes that we know from the fossil record somehow managed to survive in North America without leaving any trace, only up until the present day, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And really most of the supposed sightings of Bigfoot, are easily explained as bear sightings. So I posted one of the readings where Joe Nickel, who's a real good sort of debunker of this stuff, shows how a lot of the eyewitness testimony at the beginning of a lot of the stories, the people will say, at first I thought it was a bear, but then it stood on two legs. Later it ran on four legs. So yes, their initial conclusion was correct. It was a bear, probably, right? 99.9% sure. But then because the bear might have looked different or behaved differently than they think bears usually behave, they thought it was something else, especially when bears move on their hind legs, right? It could be kind of disconcerting for people. But they do this to sniff around, to get a little bit higher. I've seen some video of bears where their forelimbs are injured and they actually walk on their hind limbs occasionally, because their forelimbs, give them a certain amount of pain. Black bears, brown bears, even though they're called black bears, they can vary in color. Height, they could be well over 6 feet tall when they're standing on their hind legs. Right? So, at a distance or, from a certain angle, you might mistake it for something else. The joke is many people see Bigfoot, but no one can find one. Somehow there are all these sightings, and yet no one could actually find one. Whereas you'd be more likely to find a bear in your backyard picking through the trash. Right? So from the beginning of sort of the Bigfoot story in the 50s, 60s, faking evidence was a problem. This one is pretty opportune at this point, but you could also see how the paws of, especially the hind paws of a bear, look a lot like human footprints. And if at a medium pace the bear's walking, a lot of times there'll be some super position of the footprints on top of each other, right? So it might be, let's say, the front paws going down, then the back paws moving, into that space and overlapping it, and the end result is essentially something that looks like a large human footprint. So what did we see from the readings, or what did you guys see from the readings? Again, another aspect are the sort of eyes, the glowing eyes. Bears have glowing eyes at night. Sometimes when bears' eyes are injured, they might actually glow a reddish color. So you could kind of see with these two images. Here's the sort of the fake Bigfoot photo, and here's a photo of a bear walking on hind legs. Yeah. There's a lot of the evidence that suggests that what, in fact, people are looking at is bears, which there's quite a few bears out there, and, that explains it. This is another good one. Yeah, here's another good one. Yeah, and another one. And that's related to chupacabra. And many people think erroneously that chupacabra is this cryptid that goes back centuries, may even go back to sort of pre-Hispanic Central America, but that's actually not true. It's only a couple of decades old, right? And it really started in the 90s. Right? Some people think that it can be traced back to a man in Puerto Rico who saw the film Species and sort of identified, or thought he identified, a very similar being. But from all the descriptions, it looks like the sightings are actually coyotes, and probably coyotes that are suffering from a disease known as mange. Here you can see mange leads to skin problems and hair loss. Here you can see a coyote with mange where has lost all the fur on the hind legs. The hair here in the middle is standing up. Right. They also have sort of a depressed immune system. They're weak and unhealthy, and because of that, they might predate on easy prey such as livestock. So this kind of explains all the elements of chupacabra, the appearance, but also the fact that they attack livestock. Right? So there's misinterpretation, and then there's flat out hoaxing, right? So like that Bigfoot video, there was a story making the rounds a couple of years ago, a woolly mammoth in Russia, right? Siberian mammoth, and it was shown when they analyzed the video closely that it was fake. Right? Okay, one that cryptozoologists love to reference is the coelacanth fish, right? Because the coelacanth fish is essentially a living fossil, right? It is not much different than the ancient coelacanth fish. So here's a modern coelacanth, and here's an ancient fossil coelacanth. They're not much different from each other. And in a sense, a little bit like sharks. Sharks are another example of this, although sharks have evolved more from their ancient counterparts. But this is a fish that has continued from these very, very ancient times with not that much change. What the cryptozoologists point out, though, is that there's a supposed gap in the fossil record from 66 million years. Right, when we see the coelacanth fish, there's sort of a gap in the fossil record. And so, they believe that this, sometimes they use it as sort of a disproving of evolution. They're saying that you're having the same organism evolve at separate times, which is not possible, right? That it evolves, dies out, and then later evolves again, right? Or that it's a prehistoric survivor. But most likely what's going on here is that there probably are later fossils, but they just haven't been identified, or they were maybe ignored when they were found by paleontologists, right? But this is something that, obviously more research should be done on. Talked a little bit about the Kraken, right? And the Kraken is most likely a giant squid. Kind of related to that, not that long ago, I think it was a few years ago, there was a documentary on the Animal Channel, and the way they were promoting it was very was in some ways dishonest. At least that's what some people were saying, that they were making it sound out like they had evidence of mermaids and that they were going to reveal this information during this documentary. Right? And there was some reference to Noah, and so unfortunately Noah had to get involved. Right? Some people started to say that that Noah was actually covering up the evidence. This made the rounds on the internet, quite widely, right? And that they were against it because the mermaids sort of supported this aquatic ape hypothesis that mainstream science was against. But when you look on Snopes and you read the truth about the documentary, it was fake. The documentary was basically, it was a documentary, but they were presenting this fake video as if it might be fact when it was clearly a faked video. Another good examples of these kind of PSPs, or these sort of living dinosaurs that sort of made their way into cryptozoology. The Kungamoto of Zambia is described in such a way that outside explorers thought it was maybe a pterosaur, one of these flying dinosaurs, but you could see the kinds of birds that exist in that area. You can see with the shape of the wings and the tail feathers how they look a lot like these ancient dinosaurs. And the most telling thing with these sort of flying dinosaurs is that no ornithologist has ever found one, right? Because ornithologists are able to identify birds, and they're not likely to mistake a bird for something else, right? So that really is one of the most telling things. But you can see that something like a marabou stork, how much it looks like one of those ancient flying dinosaurs, like a pterosaur, from the head shape all the way to the large wingspan. This is a marabou stork in the Congo. So you could see how easily someone can mistake that for something else. Another example of a similar kind of dinosaur comes from New Guinea, and it's called a ropens. And ropens is more of a general term in New Guinea. Right? It's any featherless creature that flies in the Pacific. Its tail length more than 25% its wingspan. Right? These are sort of the part of the myth of the local culture. But today it's been spread far and wide on the internet by several people, by Norman Huntington, Nathaniel Coleman, and Jonathan Whitcomb on different websites. Well, I think it was an investigative reporter or someone else found out that Norman Huntington, Nathaniel Coleman are just pseudonyms of Jonathan Whitcomb. Right, so he was creating fake profiles on the internet in order to seem like different experts are weighing in and making this sort of live pterosaur idea seem more open, or more of a sort of a realistic option. He is a Mormon creationist, right, who believes there was a literal Garden of Eden, and he believes that the idea of the ropen will sort of support the creationist idea. This is another example of a photograph that makes the rounds on the internet a lot. This one is, and this there's different versions of this, but Civil War soldiers standing over a pterosaur. People have examined, whenever you have these kind of faked photos, they're usually made in high resolution, using Photoshop and then downsized to low resolution to cover tracks and mistakes and things like that. But people analyzing the photo could easily tell it was fake. Plus, Civil War enthusiasts pointed out that the soldiers are wearing the wrong belt buckles. They're wearing officer belt buckles when they should, and they're not officers. They're like privates. They should be wearing the sort of rounder private buckles. Also, this exact picture was on a TV show, which is, someone copied it from there probably, and it made the rounds of the internet. You see these, so if you look up Civil War and dinosaur, you're going to see a lot of these kind of fake photos. Yeah, so cryptozoology encompasses a broad range of different fields, from zoology, or really pseudozoology, to folklore, to religion, to cultural anthropology. So it's an interesting way to look at different cultures, similarities between cultures, but also look at pseudoscience. So this is going to conclude the presentation for cryptozoology and cryptids, and our next topic is going to be ancient Egypt, Egyptomania, and also astronomical alignments of ancient sites. So that will be coming soon. So I hope you guys are doing well. Stay safe, and talk to you soon.